Hello friends, today I'm going to tell you an interesting Akbar Birbal story named Birbal's Stew. Once Akbar was having a morning walk in his garden with Birbal and another minister. Akbar said, "It was really cold this year." "Yes, Your Majesty. Almost everyone moves outdoors reluctantly nowadays," the minister said. "Well, people still have to work, be it cold or not," Akbar said. "Well, they do have to, but when it gets really chilly, most of them stay indoors," the minister said. Akbar went ahead and dipped his hand in the pond present in his garden. He could not keep his fingers in the water and lifted his fingers immediately. He exclaimed, "Oh, the water is nearly freezing." "I am sure you are right. Who would venture out in this weather?" Akbar said to his minister. Birbal was hearing all the conversation clearly. He interrupted, "I am sorry, Your Majesty, but I don't agree with you." "Birbal, you don't have to contradict me in everything I say," Akbar said. "I beg your pardon, Your Majesty. I didn't mean to contradict you, but I was just pointing out that there are people who have to work in the most difficult circumstances," Birbal said. "Do you mean to say that there are people who would do anything for just a little money?" Akbar asked Birbal. "Yes, Your Majesty. That's exactly what I was suggesting," Birbal replied. "Well, I don't agree with you, Birbal. I mean, there are limits to how much a man can push himself for some wealth," Akbar said. The minister, who didn't like Birbal, laughed and said, "You are right, Your Majesty. Birbal, it is easy to tell and difficult to do. You can only imagine such a person." "Your Majesty, there are people in your kingdom who, due to certain circumstances, take up any challenging task if assured of a suitable reward," Birbal said. Akbar was determined to prove Birbal wrong this time. He said, "Birbal, why not put this theory of yours to test and find out if it is really true? Can you find someone who can stand in this freezing pond all through the night? I would reward the person with 10 gold coins for doing so." "Yes, Your Majesty," Birbal replied. "Even for such a small reward, there will be people willing to perform the task you have in mind." The minister interfered again and said, "I really would like to believe what Birbal said, but I doubt. Firstly, I don't think anyone would take up this challenge after he has felt how cold the water is. And secondly, even if he is foolish enough to take it up, then I don't think he will last till morning. Your Majesty, I am very confident I can find such a person," Birbal said. "So, let's have this test done today and prove you wrong for once," Akbar said. "I really think you have been overconfident this time, Birbal." "Your Majesty, I shall find a person by this afternoon and present him in the court in the evening," Birbal said. As usual, the court began in the afternoon. Birbal said, "Your Majesty, I have found a person who is ready to take up your challenge. His name is Gangaram. He is waiting outside for your permission." Akbar was surprised. He said, Oh, really? This man, I have to meet him. Please call him. Gangaram entered the court. Greetings, Your Majesty. Akbar asked Gangaram, has Birbal explained the task you need to perform today? Yes, Your Majesty. I have to stand in the pond in your garden all night long, Gangaram replied. Akbar was shocked to hear this. He asked astonishingly, Man, aren't you scared you would freeze to death by standing in that pond? Or haven't you realized how cold it really is? Gangaram replied, I know how cold it would be in the pond, Your Majesty. Akbar said loudly, I really think you are a fool to try this stunt for just 10 gold coins. Anyways, I shall have 2 guards standing near the pond to watch over this man while he is in the pond. Birbal, this man is our guest for tonight. Feed him well, as it may be his last meal. I'll see you both in the morning then. The same night, all arrangements were made to see that Gangaram stayed in the pond. The guards were present to check whether he stays in the pond all night. The poor man stood there throughout the night. The next day, Akbar's court began as usual early in the morning. As soon as Akbar entered the court, he asked, So, Birbal, how has your man fared at the task he was asked to do? Your Majesty, he is waiting outside. Why not ask him yourself? Birbal said. Gangaram entered the court on Akbar's command. He said, Long live Emperor Akbar. So tell us, how was your night? Akbar asked him. Gangaram replied, It was not very comfortable, Your Majesty, but I got through with Lord's blessings. Akbar and the people in the court were shocked to hear this. Akbar asked, Were you really standing in the pond the whole night? I don't believe it. Yes, Your Majesty. These guards are my witnesses, Gangaram replied. Akbar looked at those guards and said, Tell me the truth. Did this man spend the entire night in the water? Yes, Your Majesty. He stepped out of the water only at sunrise. Both of us were watching him closely, the guard said. I really find it difficult to believe you could do that. How did you manage? How did you pass your time? Akbar asked Gangaram. Gangaram told Akbar about the last night. Well, Your Majesty, it was very difficult in the beginning with the cold getting to me. But then I started looking at the lamppost at the lakeside. I spent the whole night looking at it. Aha! There your secret is out, Akbar shouted. You must have been getting the warmth of the lamp and thus managed to stay in the lake for so long. I just knew it. It couldn't have been possible for you to do it otherwise. Birbal was surprised by Akbar's statement, but he did not say anything. Gangaram's face became dull. He said, But, Your Majesty. But Akbar didn't even let him say anything. He shouted angrily, Stop! How dare you try and cheat? However, I won't punish you for it, as I can understand how difficult the task was. But you can certainly forget about any reward. Gangaram pleaded, But, Your Majesty, please listen to me. Stop! Enough! I don't want to hear any more. Guards, take this man out of the court now, Akbar ordered. Gangaram was helpless. The guards took Gangaram out of the court. Birbal still kept silent. After Gangaram was out of the court, Akbar turned to Birbal and said in pride, "Birbal, you have to admit defeat this time. You were proven wrong for once." "Forgive me, Your Majesty, for having contradicted you," Birbal said. "Well, it's all right, Birbal. Everyone can make a wrong judgment at times. Let's move on. I think we have to decide on a return gift to the Shah of Persia. Do you have any ideas?" Akbar asked Birbal. "Your Majesty, I beg your pardon, but I have a domestic problem that needs to be solved. I seek your permission to leave now and return to the court later in the afternoon," Birbal said. "Sure, Birbal, please proceed. But do come back soon," Akbar said. Birbal bowed and left the court to go to his home. In the afternoon, Akbar started searching for Birbal in his court. "Where is Birbal? Hasn't he returned from home yet?" "No, Your Majesty, he's not here yet," said one of the soldiers. "What is wrong with Birbal today? I have to decide on the Shah's gift today itself." Why don't you ride to his house with an extra horse and ask him to return to the palace as soon as possible?" Akbar ordered the messenger. After some time, the messenger returned. Seeing him alone, Akbar shouted, "How come you are alone? Where is Birbal? I asked you to get him along with you." The messenger replied in a soft voice, "Well, Your Majesty, I did go to his house and gave him your message. But Birbal was busy preparing his lunch, and he has asked me to inform you that he would be here as soon as he finishes his lunch." "What? Birbal doesn't eat so late? I think I'll have to personally go and see what Birbal is up to," Akbar said. Saying so, Akbar set out to Birbal's house along with his servant and guard. When Akbar reached at Birbal's house, there was an interesting scene to see. Akbar was wonder-struck. An earthen pot was hanging high up on a bamboo pole. There was fire on the ground. Akbar asked, "What are you up to, Birbal? The messenger said that you were having lunch. And what are you doing here?" "Your Majesty, I'm sorry to have caused any inconvenience to you today. That pot you see hanging is my lunch. I am preparing vegetable stew. Alas, it's not ready yet. I shall come to the court soon after I prepare the dish," said Birbal. "Birbal, are you out of your senses? How will it get cooked if you hang the pot so above the fire? When will you complete the dish then? When will you come to court?" "Birbal, open your eyes and look. The pot is far away from the fire," Akbar said. "Your Majesty, the dish will be prepared soon. It will really be a tasty meal today," Birbal said. Akbar couldn't tolerate this anymore. He shouted, "Birbal, have you lost all your senses? How can the food get cooked if it doesn't get heated up? And I don't see how it will if the pot is so far above the fire." "Well, Your Majesty, I thought if Gangaram could keep himself warm in the water by just looking at a lamp from some distance, then why can't my food be prepared hanging a bit higher above the fire?" Birbal asked.
Akbar realized what Birbal said. Okay, I get your point. Well, you win. Bring the poor man to the court. He shall have his reward there, said Akbar. Thank you, your majesty, Birbal said. In the court, Akbar gave Gangaram his reward. Then Akbar said to Birbal, Well done, Birbal. The method you chose left no room for any doubt. I also agree with you now that people can do anything for the sake of money. All the courtiers and the ministers praised Akbar and Birbal.
Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe for more interesting stories.